Good morning and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, so get ready to get triggered. Good morning and welcome to the Raben Report.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Hopefully the audio is working. I'm assuming it is. I'm just gonna
Don't make assumptions.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, don't assume anything is good. Well, no, it's working. Okay, shalom. Okay, hello and welcome to the Raben Report. Our introductions will basically always be like this, just so you know. I'm your host, Elliot Raben. I feel like I said that 3 times already, as you might have heard in our intro. And with me is part of my expert panel. We're just waiting on Marshall. But Adam and Daniel, how are you guys?
We're doing very well.
Doing great.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a hole in my heart. Marshall is not here. So I'm waiting for him to arrive. But other than that, I'm doing swell. Just a quick shout out.
Yeah.
The Ryerson Equity Service Center is running a referendum right now. We're trying to add $5 to the student fee. Basically, we want to get the Good Food Center, the food bank here at Ryerson, and the sexual assault support line a stable budget for better campaigns, better peer-to-peer, one-on-one sexual assault support, and better food and more locally sourced options from around Canada here on campus to the Good Food Center itself. So if you've got about 30 seconds, head to my.ryerson.ca to vote.
It's right there, yeah.
And it's right there. Please vote yes. If you want more information, head to fsss17.ca or come visit us at the bridge between Kerr Hall and the SLC.
You vote there too, right?
Yeah, you can vote there. Well, it's all online through my.ryerson. There he is. There's Marshall.
Oh, there he is.
It's all online. It's all online, my.ryerson, so make sure to head to vote, and I would really appreciate it if you vote yes. So
Fair enough. I already did, so hopefully everybody will. And here's Marshall.
Here he is.
Let's
Here
applaud
he
him.
comes.
Mazel tov.
Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going?
I don't say this
sincere
often.
apologies for my lateness.
It's all right. It's all right.
No, we're all tardy. It's okay.
Yeah.
Subway.
Don't you just hate public transportation? That's what our episode's going to be on
Public
today.
transit. What's the deal with that?
I thought I had extra time, so I decided to do my dishes, and then I did have extra time. Had the subway not stopped at both stations for an extended period of time.
So let's continue back on what you were talking about with RSU and stuff.
Yeah.
So with the vote,
Yeah.
you basically covered most of the information regarding
Yeah.
it, right? Because the way I understand it is it's going to be a $5 charge per semester with the relation to inflation, which I hope it's with the Canadian economy.
Inflation is usually around 2%, so it won't go up much higher.
If we actually do want to talk about that for a brief moment, that's the only criticism I would say I have about the actual thing.
That wasn't mentioned when they
When they first mentioned, it sounded as if it was just going to be a
$5 every year.
Yeah, right. But due to inflation, so I'm not necessarily concerned for me when at my time here at Ryerson. It's going to be for future Ryerson students seeing maybe that $5 that worked for us very well in 2017 and 2022, it's going to be not $9 and stuff like that. So I don't think it'd be too much.
Yeah. But the thing with that is,
I think the money regardless is still going to go to a really well resource, so it's pretty good.
You make a good point, but the problem is that between now and 2022, costs in general are going to go up. Wages are going to go up.
Exactly.
Resources are going to go up. Tuition itself is going to go up. Tuition increases between 3 and 5% every year. So if we're going to have a $5 fee, it's not like we can lock that in now and then have that forever.
Yeah,
in
it's not going to be
2050, $5 is not going to be the same $5 as it is today.
Yeah, exactly.
So I feel like inflation is fair, but it can be a little
at least they put it in there before,
Yeah.
and like, instead of having
right when you get to the vote.
like a new vote every year to like,
Yeah.
increase funds and increase funds.
Running a campaign like this is difficult.
Oh, for sure.
It is really
The amount of
difficult.
students that you have to like, outreach to,
especially with
so.
the resources that they have. So.
And so I think it's going to pass. I voted for it. I was very in favor of it once I had Adam explain it to me.
Thank you. I appreciate
I'd
it.
be pretty surprised if it doesn't pass.
I think I did a pretty
Yeah.
good job of convincing people I knew, more conservative people I knew who felt it might go against their conservative values to vote for it.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people felt as though it was socialist-esque, and I thought it was.
That's fair.
Well, I thought it was just the
honestly.
opposite. I thought it was very. I think private charity is one of the most capitalistic things that there is. I mean, the voluntary exchange of goods to somebody else for nothing in return, I think is a great thing that comes of capitalism, and I think we do pay tuition voluntarily. We choose to pay tuition. And one way I explained it, now I want to make sure that since I didn't sound check, that everybody can hear me properly.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
we got you.
One way I explained it to somebody is, when you go to Popeyes and you get a chicken tender platter, you might not want the biscuit. And
But
you might not want to pay for the biscuit because it might not be beneficial to you. You might not like biscuits, but if you want the chicken platter, you want that university degree, you got to pay for the biscuit as well.
Yeah.
And some people love the biscuit, and for some people that extra bit of nutrition, those carbs, are very helpful for them, and it's great. It's nice
Very
that they include the
in-depth
biscuit for that reason.
explanation here.
But I don't particularly like the biscuit, but
Now
I'm happy to pay for it.
Now I just want to go to Popeyes. But
That biscuit's so thick. It's so
I eat
good.
a lot of Popeyes.
I used to, and then my skin paid for it.
Yes.
Oh my goodness!
My
Chicken
sin.
tenders, blackened ranch,
Yeah.
extra crispy fries, maybe a poutine in there.
Oh
you're
no,
set. So good.
you're just setting me up for Acne Central. Like it was terrible.
So what else do we have on the agenda?
I wanted to mention this. Obviously, as per Spirit Live rules and regulations, all opinions expressed on the show are not those of Ryerson or Ryerson faculty, and are only those of the individual commentators. So if you don't like crispy chicken and Popeyes, don't worry. Doesn't relate to Ryerson at all. Viewer discretion is advised, though, for our topic. Let's start with our recap of the week, which we're going to start with Harvey. Adam, this was Harvey Weinstein. You mentioned that he got some like ex-Mossad agents. What's going on there?
In my elevator up to my apartment, there's CB24 in the thing, and basically when I was up the elevator, there was a Canadian, an Ontario woman, charging Harvey Weinstein with sexual assault. But when they went to go serve him the papers, they couldn't find him. So it spiraled out into this whole sort of where's Harvey Weinstein, where's Waldo type thing. And what turned up was that he hired a firm to spy for him to see where they were following him. And that firm is actually an Israeli firm, and the people working for the firm are ex-Mossad agents, which is the Israeli spy force.
Great.
CIA. So I just found that an interesting connection to Israel, and for the Jewspiracy people out there, it all leads back. The whole Harvey Weinstein scandal has sort of exploded. We talked about Kevin Spacey last week, and then now it's hitting Ed Westwick.
Justin
really?
Hoffman.
Ed Westwick?
Yeah, Ed Westwick, Chuck Bass.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I loved Gossip
Yeah.
Girl.
I mean, it's still allegations.
BS.
It's still allegations, but still.
It doesn't matter. Like we've had this conversation before about like survivors and like sexual
Yeah.
assault and stuff like that. Regardless if you've done it or not, the
Yeah.
accusation alone is just so devastating.
Yeah.
And you know what?
And you're a monster if that actually did happen.
On
but-
the show, did we already discuss the George H.W. Bush, the
No.
sexual harassment allegations against him?
No.
No.
And so
No, we
that's
haven't.
concerning to me because looking at those allegations, I think those are complete bullshit.
Against
George
yeah.
41 has been confined to a wheelchair for the last 7 or 8 years.
Oh, he grew up someone.
Well, he patted a woman on the bottom.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have to think about the fact that he is not all there. He's 90.
He was the head of the CIA
old,
back in the
94
day,
years
right?
old.
Yeah.
And he
Wow.
is constantly at about waist height of most people, and that's where his arms would be. And I mean, I think that he patted a woman on the bottom, whether he meant it in a malicious way or it was an accident or it was his mind's clearly not all there, and he. I mean, he voted for Hillary Clinton, so obviously there's something going on there. And he just thought it was an okay thing to do. He's 94 years old and in a wheelchair, and I mean, he's basically like I can't even say a walking corpse at this point. He's a rolling corpse at this point.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, he's not a threat to anybody. Like, I think that's ridiculous.
Or I appreciate that these allegations are coming up just so it sheds light on Hollywood and how corrupt, what a bad place it is. But here's the thing though, they tried putting Adam Sandler on blast because if you look at me, they put some girl he was sitting with next to on the Graham Norton show, and he just grabs his the knee, right? Yeah, and so she pushes him away, and he does it again. And then after she does it, the second time, pushes away, he's like, okay, that's fine. But they show another video of him with Dustin Hoffman, another terrible person. We can talk about that after.
Yeah, Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, he does the same thing to him and starts grabbing his knees. But people are automatically assuming that he's trying to do it in a malicious way, like you said, with George H.W.
I think some people are very touchy, and I think that being touchy can get creepy. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that when you're with somebody who's rather touchy, if they're touching you in a way that makes you uncomfortable, you tell them, and if they stop, then I see no harm, no foul. Unless there's obviously
if you keep doing it, and if you sort of get around it,
and you don't get the point,
you don't get the point, you don't get the idea, then you have a problem. It's your fault,
and it's within reasonable limits, of course. I mean, putting your hand on somebody's knee is not too bad. Putting your hand on
for some people it can be, though. That's the thing.
For sure. And then you tell them to stop. But I think that's not a terrible thing to do to somebody.
No.
Putting your hand on somebody's upper middle thigh, that's a bit different.
Yeah.
Or upper inner thigh, rather. And that's not okay. But, touching somebody's face, touching their knee, that's
or
what people do sometimes.
Thing,
they're touching.
It's all about personal space for that.
But speaking of things that happen a lot, we have to talk about the Texas shooting now, because we literally just frickin' spoke about shootings, and then this happened again. Now, one of the biggest questions about this is this a terrorist act? Because he did, in a sense, have political means. He was an atheist
Democrat, apparently.
Who
we don't know
killed Christians in a church. So there could be a ideological political motive. So he could be classified as a terrorist in a sense, right?
Yeah, so, I think one accusation that comes unfairly from the left towards people on the right a lot is a unwillingness to call white people terrorists.
Yeah.
And I think that's an unwarranted accusation. I don't think that there is an unwillingness to call white people terrorists.
Yeah.
I think that
it's just
a lot
context.
of the time when these white people commit these terrible acts, it is simply not terrorism. And I really, as you guys know, I do not like changing the definition of words at all. And I don't like this whole changing the definition of terrorism to make people feel better about a tragic incident.
Yeah.
If this guy truly was killing these people because he is an atheist who hates Christians, and maybe he's a Democrat who hates Southern Baptists, Republicans, then yes, that's terrorism. We don't know, though. And I'm more than happy to, well, happy is not the right word. I'm more than fine with calling this guy a terrorist if that is the case. Much like if Stephen Paddock was shooting at those country concert attendees because he doesn't, like Republicans who are country listeners, or they're perceived to be.
Yeah.
But we don't know that. We don't know motives yet, and we can't just change the definition of a word.
See, the problem with that, I agree with you that I think now I've sort of seen the right be okay with calling white people terrorists. But that's sort of you're being we don't know. I feel like if it were a Muslim, the right wouldn't have that sort of second
guessing
screening.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Where they would be we don't know. They would be boom, terrorist, done. He's a terrorist. So I feel with white people, there's more of an okay, wait until the facts.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to call someone from a marginalized group terrorist or something like that as an act of terrorism.
You're right. And so when we do see somebody like the Manhattan incident, somebody who gets out of a truck and screams Allahu Akbar and kills people, I do think that you're right, we don't know. Yeah. But I think it's a fairly reasonable assumption.
It's a reasonable assumption, exactly. But, as soon... there's not even a moment to spare with that. I believe that the Manhattan attacker was a terrorist.
Maybe we need to be more precise with our language and say presumed terrorist.
Yeah, presumed terrorist, and I think that this Texas shooter was a presumed terrorist. There was a lot of mental health issues, from what I understand. He beat his wife, he beat his kids, he was court-martialed to be away from them, and he shouldn't have had access to a gun, but somehow he did.
Well, he was dishonorably discharged from the military.
And the problem is that there is fine gun legislation, but it's not being enforced.
Yeah.
That's my issue.
Yeah.
From what I heard, also was like it was a problem with the actual database because like I forget if it was like the military or the NRA. I don't know how involved the NRA is specifically about it, but when he was disarmed with discharge, they were supposed to put it in a particular database for gun store owners to do their background
With
checks.
gun culture in the United States,
Yeah.
nothing can be enforced.
Yeah, but they didn't update the database showing that he wasn't like to show like an example like in a no-fly list. The same example like okay, he can't buy a gun.
Yeah.
That database wasn't updated, so it actually gave him the ability to buy that gun, even though it should have been illegal. So that's a problem with like proper enforcement of the thing, like, which is crazy.
I do want to,
ridiculous.
because we were talking about like shootings, Republicans and attacks and Democrats and whatever, but we got a comment on the live feed to talk about Rand Paul being assaulted. And
Oh, yeah, I read about
Just
that.
like 1 minute to that, because I also want to touch on one more quick news
So,
story.
Quickly, I think it's good to see that people are now aware of it, because I think when it first happened, I understand there was a lot of other news going on, but people didn't seem to care. And I feel like is he a congressman or a senator now? I believe he's a senator.
He's
Isn't he a senator?
a senator.
A senator being assaulted at their own home is a big deal, and I know that would be a huge deal if it happened in Canada, regardless of what what side of the aisle they're on. And Rand Paul's a well-known guy. I mean, I supported him in the in the Republican primaries last year. He was my number 1 guy. I still love him. I think he's absolutely fantastic. And the way I think I've mentioned this before.
He's a very reasonable man.
I'm fairly libertarian, and I think that any real libertarian runs in the Republican Party, because the Libertarian Party of the U.S. is the epitome of false advertising. And I love Rand Paul, and I think it's tragic that he had bruised lung and 5 broken ribs.
Yeah.
And just as it would be tragic if it happened to a politician I didn't like, but since I really like Rand Paul, it was especially
tragic.
So then, what was actually the scoop on it?
It just
then?
seems
Was
like
it an intruder?
a dispute between neighbors, and this neighbor just had enough of him.
Really?
They've had disputes between like yard trimmings and loud noises and things like that. I think this neighbor just had enough of his shit. And
Did he at least get caught by the police then?
Yeah.
Okay.
They knew it was his neighbor. The entire neighborhood knew that they've been sparring for years now.
Right.
So I wish him all the best, and
Yeah, wish him a speedy
yeah,
recovery.
he's
According to
one of
people are aware now.
he's one of my favorite Republicans in the legislature.
So the last thing I want to touch quickly on, because literally every single time our 5-minute recap becomes a half-hour recap. The last thing, very important, at least to me, is that right now we're having Holocaust Education Week at Ryerson. We have a photo exhibit right now at the SLC, which is a Student Learning Center. Very powerful, and it's just, looking at those photos, it really, really makes you understand that a lot of the things you worry about now are so small and they're so unimportant, because you look at those photos and you see how many people perished, how many Jews, how many gypsies, gays, everyone perished at the hands of such pure evil, and you look at the photos and you just
It's
just
speechless.
It's just unimaginable that would happen, and it's really, I say, beneficial to us at Ryerson that we have a Holocaust Education Week, because sorry.
I think Elliot summed it up very well.
Yeah, he hit it right
I
on
think
the mark.
there's much more that can be added to
I'm
talking
volunteering with that. I'll be there at some point today, so come by. It's a good exhibit. It goes pre-war, during the war, and post-war, and sort of this walk.
Yeah, it starts
sort of
right
weaving
before
way.
Hitler got into
Yeah.
power. Then it goes showing his rallies. Because I actually saw it yesterday, and Adam was there.
Yeah.
It was really awesome exhibit.
Yeah.
I would say that in a positive way, showing that it really grasps the severity of the Holocaust, and shows
And the
like, the
folks at
history about
Hillel
it,
are so nice and so
I love them,
helpful. Yeah, they're really good people.
I mean, I think it was all said what's so important about it, but I think it's great that it's happening. I remember last year at the RSU semi-annual general meeting, they
had a
there was
walkout.
It was a big
staged
fight.
by certain groups to who didn't want Holocaust Awareness Week to happen because of the Holocaust going on in Palestine, and I mean, I put air
the
quotes there
apartheid?
because there's issues in Palestine with the treatment of the Palestinian people, of course. I mean, I'm pro-Israel, but I'm also I support Palestine as well. I support the Palestinian people, but calling it a Holocaust is just such a
It's not the right
it
term.
does a lot of
and just this whole separate issue, but just calling everybody that doesn't agree with you a Nazi, that just really takes out the the real Nazis,
trivializes the
trivializes it,
Holocaust,
right? Like it just makes what the Holocaust was nothing. If you call everybody a Nazi, right? Like
That's my big issue with the punch a Nazi thing and stuff, because there's Nazis, there are neo-Nazis today.
for sure.
I would not call Richard Spencer a neo-Nazi. There are people who are prominent figures of the alt-right who are neo-Nazis. I'm not trying to whitewash them or anything, but I mean, when you can call him a neo-Nazi and you can call, just libertarians neo-Nazis too, is something I see.
Or it's literally just someone who doesn't agree with you as a neo-Nazi.
who is not a Nazi at that point, and then who is not allowed to be punched.
Yeah, everybody should get punched at some point for whatever view they have.
So, now that we've finished that, we got to go to our main topic because we got about half an hour left, half the show. So starting this season on the Raben Report, we'll be having our new What the Fuck Is series, basically tackling a major issue that's not always fully understood. On today's episode, we bring you What the Fuck Is Marxism. As I personally am not too clear myself, and originally thought that it was about the existentialism of a guy named Mark, my introduction will be short and sweet. Before we start, though, remember that we are on Facebook, so you can comment on our feed, and we'll read your comments live on air. So the first question, obviously, what the fuck is Marxism?
I love the way properly he's doing it. But
Well, there's so many elements to it that I think the basic understanding that we are taught in political science would be that it's a system based on class conflict. It's a system based on the struggle of the working class against the capitalist class, the producers against the what's the word, Adam?
the bourgeoisie.
No,
The producers and the
Consumers?
the proletariat.
No, the
Yeah.
producers are the proletariat. They have, there's all
The
sorts of different
proletariat.
words for.
Well, the conflict, like the way they describe it, is
And-
between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Which is the ruling class over the working class.
Yeah.
It's very complicated though when you actually think about it, but history shows
the
us.
capitalist.
Yeah,
I've heard
The
that
capitalist
different word,
dogs,
but
that's
it
what
doesn't
we
matter.
thought.
The capitalist and the proletariat. Yeah.
But I think with the idea behind Marxism, like it shows like it's a very a strong criticism of capitalism and of like different governmental. What's the word I'm looking for right now? Different forms of government that's been created by the state. So in this one specifically, like it's. I don't know, I'm trying to think of like the perfect word to describe it. It's positive way. It's trying to fix the problems in society by reducing the abuse of power by the ruling class, and tries to spread out wealth and equality into the proletariat. But I don't think it, like we've shown in history, isn't as effective. So like we've seen like crazy examples like in Russia and stuff like that, where like, and it was like the USSR and stuff like that. It's not like they've like grasped like ideas from that before. The actual history behind it's pretty interesting though.
Yeah.
So our friend Will Anderson here corrected me. It's the producers and the owners is the word I was
owners,
thinking of.
okay.
I was thinking it must be more complicated than that, but now that he says it, that's what it is.
I failed as a communist. I couldn't provide the word.
One thing a lot of people don't realize, not only about Marxism, but a lot of other philosophies, political or otherwise, is that when you say you're a Marxist or any of these other philosophies, you have to realize that you are also espousing a lot of other views that you may not know about. Many people call themselves Marxists, but don't realize that includes a desire to abolish the family, abolish countries and borders, abolish the idea of inheritance. And these are things that
They wouldn't agree
come
with,
from not necessarily about redistributing wealth, which I think a lot of people see it simply as, but
I think that's the basic core principle that everyone thinks about when they
exactly.
think
But
of
there's
Marxism.
so much more to it.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
just about redistribution of wealth, and it's a very strongly postmodern ideology, because it's all about questioning and abolishing traditional systems, traditional knowledge, and traditional viewpoints, I suppose. And I think that when you talk about Marxism, people think of it as economic purely, and economic Marxism, I think, is significantly less concerning to me than cultural Marxism, which is essentially the system that there are people who are disadvantaged and that it's everybody else's fault, namely the capitalist class's fault.
Yeah.
And it takes its form in safe spaces, for example, and in... could somebody else think of another example? Because I don't want to...
Of Marxism being present in like...
In cultural Marxism.
Cultural Marxism, sort of the idea of nationalism being disavowed. The idea that, celebrating, Canada 150. Our borders, our achievements, everything of that being collapsed because Marxism doesn't believe in the state, in the existence of the state, in the existence of the class, of the classes and working people and things like that.
It tries to destroy those class barriers too, but that's from like the rulers, or sorry, the owning and the workers and stuff.
All right.
It's so complicated. It's such a touchy subject. Poke it with a stick. Come on, Adam.
All right. So here we go. My time to shine. My time to shine, fellas. So for a long time, I considered myself a Marxist. From about 16 until I was 19, I still have the Soviet anthem on my phone.
I mean, it's a good song. It's a good song.
It's a good anthem. It's a powerful anthem.
Imagine you play that at a party.
Yeah.
Play it right now.
I had a hammer and sickle in my room, a very small one, but I had one. And I was very proud of the idea of Marxist and Leninist ideas. I was a big proponent of those ideas. I was a big proponent of the abolition of state, of class, of order. And then I don't know what happened to me, but
You read a book?
I read a book. And
You were red-pilled?
I wasn't red-pilled, but I sort of moved away from that because I like capitalism. I'm sorry. I like stuff. I like things. I like buying things. I like owning things. I like.
Don't you like the idea of like becoming a better person through your own merit?
Yeah,
because that's what capitalism.
I
has to
like
offer,
new
though.
stuff. I like rising up. I like whatever. I like a lot of what capitalism provides me. So, what I would like to talk about Marxism, and one part that I'm still very proud to hold to my own belief, is workers' rights.
Okay.
And so I'm in a philosophy class, philosophy of human nature, and
that's a good course. Yeah.
And it's a great course. The professor that I have, Sasha Stenikovich, very good professor. Basically, we started to learn about how Marx came to be, how his ideas came to be. And Marx was sitting one day in his room just chilling, allegedly, I don't know, I wasn't there. And basically what the idea that he came to have was that, let's say if I'm working, right? I'm working in a factory, I'm making shoes. If I work every day for 50 years and I get 100% of the value that the shoes bring, the cost, the net profit of these pair of shoes. I make a pair of shoes, I get the materials, blah, blah, blah. Let's say the materials cost $40. These shoes go on to sell for $300. Let's say every pair of shoes I produce, I get $260. Can you imagine the wealth I would have in 50 years? From every pair of shoes I make being worth $260. And I would make 300 pairs of shoes a day, and I can't do math, so whoever would like to do that, go right on ahead. But I would have a lot of money. And Marx sort of sat there and he was like, whoa, look at that. If the workers got everything from what they produced, there would be a wealthy population. Everyone would be wealthy. Everything would work out just fine. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think, because then inflation would just skyrocket and everybody would have too much money and everything would cost tens of thousands of dollars. But
a loaf of bread would be like a ridiculous
loaf of bread
amount.
would be like in Zimbabwe, $8 trillion or whatever it is. So for me,
wasn't it like 1 billion marks in World War I for Germany? For
it was like
a
6 million.
You literally were carrying like German marks, like in a wheelbarrow just to
the
pay for
Deutschmark. If you burned the Deutschmark and you sold the ash, you would
worth
get
more
more money than the actual money that you have.
It's ridiculous.
So Marx talks about two foundations of human nature. One being that production, producing things, is the nature of human essence, working. Humans are nothing if we do not work.
Yeah,
Which
gives
dates
us-
back to
it
like
gives us,
prehistoric
a purpose.
times,
Yeah,
right?
it
Value
gives us
in
a
life.
purpose and it gives us a reason to live, because unless we do that, like everything we do, breathing is a production. We are living to breathe and we are producing oxygen and whatever.
So he considered that the purpose
He
of life.
considered that the purpose of life, production.
And just out of
producing.
curiosity, he had no affiliation with any religion at all? Like, did he think that no
I
religion
think he
had
was
any?
raised Catholic.
No, he was.
I thought he was an atheist.
He was an atheist.
Yeah.
He was
had
an
a Jewish
atheist.
family.
Jewish family.
But also, I
Oh,
believe his
great. The
parents.
Jew-spiracy goes even further.
I believe his parents were atheists as well.
Yeah.
I believe he came from a long line of Jewish.
But isn't
atheists.
that
I knew he was an atheist.
But that's another important idea about Marxism. Like, if we're going to be removing all this idea of the state and stuff like that,
Yeah,
and of, like,
abolish religion.
Yeah,
that's a
'cause,
big
yeah,
part
this-
of it as well.
instead of like
Is that
separation
what
of church and
Marxism
state, just
says,
full
to
on
abolish religion, though?
I'm not entirely sure. I'm pretty sure that would be part of.
I
the
believe.
premise.
It's a
I don't
crucial
want to say for
component.
sure,
Yeah,
but I do believe that
it
is part of
sounds about right.
Mhm.
Okay. Just
so,
curious.
sorry, I have my notes here from the philosophy class itself.
Yeah.
So, and basically, when you are a worker and you produce that pair of shoes that I mentioned, and you never get to see that pair of shoes being sold and being worn and being enjoyed, and you only get, whatever X minimum wage or whatever wage you're being paid, you are being alienated from your production. You are being alienated from your labor. So in that alienation, you lose your human essence because you do not see the fruits of your labor. You do not see what your labor is producing, and in that way, you lose the you lose your human essence. So capitalism, to Marx, is the removal of human essence, and we are enslaving the worker. Do I agree with that? Not entirely. I believe that outsourcing labor and sweatshops and things like that are big examples of that. And the fact that I can get a shirt for $20 when it costs $2 to make and the person making it gets 50 cents is what capitalism is, and is what Marx showed us being wrong. So this is how the whole sort of running joke started with seize the means of production. That's what he means by seizing the means of production. That the workers should have all of what they produce and all of what they get.
Yeah, it's like putting value in what you do.
Put
and like,
value in what you do. And there are capitalist companies that are doing that. Like Google. Google tries very hard to show their employees what they're producing and rewards them very highly for the work that they produce.
And I think Marx comes from a place of fundamental misunderstanding of what capitalism is. I think he thinks that capitalism comes with... capitalism is a very, very simple concept. It really is. Marxism is not a simple concept.
It's very complex.
And I think...
That's why I'm just isolating two particular philosophies.
I think opposing a very, very simple concept like capitalism with a very, very complex concept like Marxism causes a lot of issues and discrepancies and inconsistencies. And I think that people need to realize that capitalism is simply the voluntary exchange of goods and services. That's it. There's nothing else to it.
So, in terms of Marxism nowadays, why has it become so attractive to young people? You literally
I can answer that question.
What do you make of these Marxist groups on campus? Why are so many people interested in it?
Yeah, they're everywhere.
The problem,
Literally.
the problem with old conservatives, with the boomer generation of conservatives, is they are very and I know this is a generalization. I'm fully pulling that out there, but they're from what I've seen compared to old boomer liberals and Marxists themselves, they are very unforgiving to young people. Oh, look at you on your phones, buying your fancy gadgets. That's why you can't afford food. Oh, look at you. You don't even want to work for a job. Oh, look at you. You don't even want to do this, this, and this.
You want everything handed to you.
Yeah, you want
so-
you want handouts. You want, you want entitlements. You want this and that. The left and Marxists will look at young people and be like, you're racialized. You're suffering through a lot being a racialized person. You are a queer person.
There's
You're
all these
suffering.
intersections that you have to take
There
care
are
of,
a lot
yeah.
of intersections that the left and the Marxists will be like, hey, we see that. We see that you are losing out in life. So
I wouldn't use it as a scapegoat, but like it uses like your intersections of like every individual person as a way to understand some of the what's the word I'm looking for? difficulties in your life
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So like you're facing race, like, you're facing discrimination not only because you're not of the ruling class of the bourgeoisie, but also because like you're queer,
Yeah.
or like you're of a particular marginalized group and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So like it's
You've
very
gone
attractive.
through foster
Yeah,
care.
it's very attractive
It's
to young
very
people.
attractive to young people to get that pat on the shoulder.
Yeah.
And be like, you know what? I see you. I see
Like,
you.
you're
out
suffering
here.
and I understand your
see
pain.
your suffering. I see your pain. But then they come in and you know what? Your pain comes from capitalism. Your pain comes from your exploitation. Your pain
Your
comes
alienation
from,
of your
from
work. Yeah.
alienation of your labor, and your pain comes from your class oppression. And then that's why it's attractive, because young people are like, hell yeah.
So
Yeah.
then my question is, why is it so attractive to white people? Because there's always this argument like, oh, white people are oppressed, but this, whatever.
I haven't been able to understand that.
Now, that's tougher, and
Why
I have
Marxism
some.
is attractive to
White
people.
I
because-
certainly have some theories on that, but I don't have anything concrete, so I don't want to act. I don't want to act like I'm some supreme knowledge on this. But
You're white, you
Supreme
should
leader
know,
Kim
right?
Jong-un.
Yeah.
I'd like to.
I speak for the entire white race.
I'm white. I
You're
should
white,
know,
you should
but-
know. Come on.
yeah, we had a meeting about this, bro.
I want to give some background on my related to my philosophical views on why Marxism has become popular with young people. And it's,
Hot take.
I'm
Hot
a
take
big
coming
fan
in.
of Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, and I know psychology students scoff at those two, and I think that, I'm not trying to say I'm more knowledgeable on psychology than you are, because I'm not, but I do think that Freud and Jung are criminally undertaught in university
I
psychology.
fully agree with that.
I
will
think that
agree
they
with
are dismissed as,
think people are scared to talk about
Freud
Freud.
just thinks everyone wants to have sex with their mothers. I mean, that is one idea he has, and I think it's a bit silly. And he's that was a long time ago, and he was a drug addict, and he had some silly ideas for sure. But
Every
Freud and
philosopher's
Jung
like that,
were
though.
geniuses, and they have such important ideas that are so fundamental to everything about psychology, philosophy, theology, and they're criminally undertaught. Anyway, Freud and Jung both talked about the discontented man, and how the discontented man is a man or a woman or a person in a situation that they are not happy with, that is more often than not due to their own doing, their own irresponsibility or what have you. And so this discontented man does not want to accept responsibility for his failures and for his situation. He wants to blame it on everyone but himself. And now this is the first step into postmodernism, which is going against the objective truth of the situation. And so he says, no, this is not my fault. This is whoever's fault. And now with Marxism, it gives you somebody to blame.
Yeah,
it gives
you the
you not
capitalist.
just capitalists, not just rich people, but the people who are inherently at more advantage than you through immutable characteristics. So for a person of color, white people; for a gay person, straight people; for a transgender person, cisgender people. It allows you to, put the blame on the ruling class, and no matter what class that happens to be.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to that, as soon as you can ignore one objective truth, you can start to ignore all sorts of other objective truths. And then eventually you think that every objective truth is the product of Eurocentric, white supremacist colonial systems. And that nothing we know is really true. It's all meant to put you in this bad situation that I'm not trying to say all people in bad situations are there by their own doing, but I do think that people in bad situations can always make their situation better. They can't fix it. I'm not saying they can all fix it. I'm saying that there's always something they can do to make it better. And I think that there's a desire to not make things better because it's not your own fault, because it's the ruling class's fault. Anyway, white people, I think, are made to feel guilty about this, and not necessarily on purpose, but I think that
I would
the
say
white
on
guilt,
purpose, being like,
No,
yeah,
I-
sometimes
I
being
think
guilty
on
to be worse.
purpose.
yeah, for sure. Sometimes
fully
on
There is
purpose.
a lot of white guilt out there.
Yeah.
And some of it, I think, is merited, and some of it is not.
Yeah.
I don't think you should run up to a white person and be like, you're at fault for slavery. But if you look at a lot of high-power politicians in the United States, like Bill O'Reilly being like, hey, the slaves that built the White House, they had food and shelter. Wasn't so bad. Be like, no, shut up.
Yeah,
like slavery was terrible.
There's just some things that like you can't like
how
spin it in a
dare
good
you
way.
in any way, shape, or form try and make slavery a good thing?
Yeah,
shut up.
Now, I have been accused of doing that, and I'd like to, for anybody who's in my social identity and citizenship class, I'd like to clear up that I was not.
I wasn't there.
I was
wasn't
not
there.
doing the same.
I was
thing.
not trying to
I gotta
subtweet
put my take on
Marshall.
that too, because like he's
I
oh
was
my
not
god.
trying to do what Bill O'Reilly was trying to do there and say, "Oh, slavery wasn't so bad." Our prof was saying that slavery got worse in the last 500 years of slavery.
True.
And that it was much worse in the in the States, in the Western world.
Yeah.
And I would disagree with both of those things. And I put up my hand and I said, where does that come from? That's just not true.
Like, well, just prove it,
And so she goes, it's
In Brazil, it was a lot worse.
Well, you're right.
Yeah.
It was a lot worse in Brazil. I would argue that in America it was better than in the Ottoman Empire, though. Not that any slavery is good ever, but
yeah,
I would
but
imagine.
who can like make that idea up, thinking that slavery was good in one place?
I
but
would
not in the
imagine
other?
that a slave is being told, okay, you get to choose one of these places. They're not choosing the Ottoman Empire,
Yeah.
because they were castrated prior to going over, because they're going to get castrated anyway, because of the beliefs that these Africans could not be trusted around women if they had their genitals intact. So anyway, I said, no, it's not true that it was worse in America. And she goes, well, we are not defending slavery in this class. And I said, I'm not defending slavery. Girl behind me goes, yes, you are. And I say, no, I mean, just because of the values that are different in between the Ottoman Empire and America, the Christian values that ran America much more strongly at the time, these slaves were fed and castrated less frequently and given medical attention and shelter, and it was terrible.
And they
It
were
was
educated,
absolutely
like,
terrible.
in a
But
religious way,
you cannot
too.
make the claim that it was better in the Ottoman Empire.
But what were the numbers in the Ottoman Empire?
80%, and
80% what were castrated?
were castrated.
No, numbers of slaves.
Oh well, that was the biggest slave trade in the world prior to them going over to Brazil.
Okay.
And it was always bigger than the U.S.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not trying to say any slavery is good or even better, but you cannot say it was worse in the U.S.
Yeah, or if you want to make the comparison, like in that class we were talking more about the Ottoman Empire. We didn't really touch about Brazil. And if you think about the working conditions in Brazil, like think about it here, like in the United States, what were they doing? They were working on plantations, basically just bougie farms, like really big farms. In the Ottoman Empire, what were they?
I wouldn't say bougie farms, but
No, like
Well,
the houses
bigger-
were for the
guys-
slave
guys they were
owners.
working
for.
Not the conditions for the slaves,
No, no, no,
obviously.
no, no.
But my point being is, though, in Brazil, they were mining.
yeah.
And mining already itself, even today in present day, is a very extremely dangerous profession, right? So working in there, they obviously did not treat them like fairly and whatsoever, and like they probably thought the amount of like people that died from like suffocation and asphyxiation working in those mines at least, and they were also like producing sugar cane and stuff like that. That's a long process, and it was a complete like exploitation of the Africans like in that diaspora that they did as well there. So like
From what I know about the differences between the Brazilian slave trade and the American one, at some point in America they could stop importing slaves,
Right.
Because
They
the
never
slaves
stopped in
in
Brazil.
America were having children, but in Brazil they never stopped importing slaves because they kept dying.
Yeah.
So and there were so many more slaves that went to Brazil, and the slave trade kept going. A lot of the reason because of the need in Brazil for slaves.
Yeah.
In America, at some point, it was generational, and that's not much better either because you're born into slavery.
Yeah.
And things. But the thing for me, and I know this is unrelated to Marxism, but the legacy of slavery in the States is much worse than the rest of the world, I think, even today. And especially until the civil rights movement in the United States, 100 years post the Emancipation.
I would disagree because there are
Proclamation.
black communities in the States that are doing quite well. I mean, the black communities in the States are overall not doing well, but there are black communities in the States that are doing well.
in comparison to
where
the
are the
black
people
states in
Turkey?
Brazil, like
Where are the black people in Turkey? Do you know any black Turks? You ever met a black Turk?
No.
No, because they all died. They all died. They all died of castration related infections and having their ears cut off and things like that. And they were. I'm not trying to say that slavery was better anywhere because that's a terrible way to
But
phrase
even the
it.
comparison for Brazil now, like in terms of the black population, like black people in the United States, they're not.
Yeah.
thousands of times better off than black people in Brazil right now. They're all living, not all of them, but a majority of them are living in favelas, which is the poorest of the poorest communities in Brazil and stuff like that.
So,
and if you want to talk about privilege, and if you want to talk about like being oppressed, like as a group, I could see a lot
Elliot,
more.
I know you want to get a word in, but I want to tie what I was saying back to Marxism. Anyway,
okay, good. I was going to try to get back.
You know, I don't think it should be controversial to counter the false claim that slavery was the worst in the U.S. And I think that the reason it is controversial is because of this cultural Marxism that has permeated the academic world.
Especially here in Ryerson,
has
too.
completely bastardized the academia in general and into hating America, because America is the epitome of the capitalist bourgeoisie ruling class. And so of course you can say slavery was the worst in America, despite that being empirically untrue, because that's the Marxist world we are in. I'm not saying our world as a whole is Marxist, but the academic world certainly is.
Yeah, in Ryerson specifically, we have all these posters now. I saw one today. Like,
the Fight Back Club.
Yeah, 100 years after the Russian Revolution and stuff like that.
Today, actually.
It's today, the event.
Today is 100 years since the Bolshevik Revolution.
You know what
ridiculous.
today is, actually? Today is 1 year since Trump got elected. That's just a separate thing.
Oh, wow.
Tomorrow,
But that's the thing, though. Like in academia and stuff like that, it's so, like...
I just don't.
prominent and popular right now, and it puts capitalism as the worst thing in the world, colonialism as literally worse than the devil.
Colonialism is the worst thing that has ever happened. I will talk
that's
about
fine,
that
but
for the rest of my life.
It criticizes capitalism way too much, and then it makes people who have nationalistic ideas as the worst thing ever. I'm like, what's wrong with being patriotic?
The problem is that capitalism motivated colonialism. There wouldn't be a need for colonialism without the need for the goods and the resources that
I would
the West had.
I'd agree with you on that. Yeah,
Well, I think it was inherently anti-capitalistic because
Why
of
would you say that?
the elimination of the voluntary aspect.
I don't think that. I think it was very voluntary. The idea to seek new land, the whole idea of the fact that I forget the name. I think it was John Cabot that was on the boat. That he was on a boat near Newfoundland, and he was sleeping on a ship, and he woke up and he was stopped outside by the amount of fish that were in the water.
Yeah.
And he went back to Europe, and he was like, "Get a load of this.
Yeah.
There are so many fish out that way that my boat freaking stopped." And they were like, "Yo, shit. We got to go fish over there." So for me, that is capitalist. The seeking for.
Well, I don't think needing goods and resources is capitalistic. I think that these people. I don't think killing people to seize their goods is capitalistic whatsoever. I would argue that it's more akin to communism. I think that taking things at gunpoint from people is the opposite of capitalism.
Or like using a military force to control and oppress people.
No, but for communism, I think that would be true if it were the lower class and the upper class. If it were
well, you could say that because like the upper class would be like the colonizers who are more educated and stuff like that.
Right.
Well, and then the oppressed would be like the
them
Aboriginal groups
from the natives.
Yeah,
So
that couldn't defend themselves.
Would you say that Stalinism is not communism, or are you in that?
No, I wouldn't say that, because if I want to define communism and Marxism, the Soviet Union evolved from feudalism.
Yeah.
Marx himself agreed that true communism needs to evolve from capitalism, because you need wealth and goods to have an equal society and to share that way. So, and the best way to produce wealth is capitalism.
Right. So the Stalin government seizing the farm-produced goods from the Ukrainian farmers at gunpoint, I would say that that's very similar to what happened with the colonialism. I would say that's all very similar.
Yeah.
I don't think it can be called capitalistic to seize things at gunpoint from people. I think it's
No,
the opposite.
I don't think that Columbus going to the Cubans and seizing their sugar is capitalist. But the motivation to get wealth from the resources is very capitalist.
Well, I think that wanting things isn't capitalist. I think that capitalism includes wanting things.
Yeah.
But I think that like feudalism would
Yeah.
be more appropriate, I'd say. The ownership of land by royalty through force, that makes more sense.
But yeah,
to
if
me.
we're gonna talk about feudalism and this and like the Tsar and stuff, like it's very like Marxism was like an evolution of that. Of like it's a response to another type of extreme like levels of oppression from like the Russian Tsar and stuff like that, from feudalism and stuff. So.
Lenin rose because of oppression from the Tsar, and then after that Rasputin, the monk.
Yeah.
And that way, like and the Germans.
He was actually a monk?
Yeah, well, they called him the monk because
Okay.
he looked like one.
Yeah,
but-
like, with his like crazy like, facial hair and stuff. Yeah.
So for me, the whole idea that Lenin came to power was because of that.
Yeah.
So that was an excellent discussion. We went everywhere from Bill O'Reilly to slavery to colonialism, back to Marxism to capitalism. Excellent discussion. I could like you guys were so into it. It was amazing. I hope our viewers enjoyed it. But we do have to wrap up. That was our show for this week. Thank you to everyone that tuned in and that messaged us live. Make sure to tune in next week to our show titled Colonialism, Capitalism, and whatever the fuck else we talked about today in further detail. Yeah, so tune in to us next week. Same day, same time, same people. Have a great day, everyone.